My name is Matthew Garvey. I'm one of the founders and directors at Four Corners Immigration. This is our 29th year that we've been operating, and of those 29 years, I think around 25 or more, I have been working with Paola. So we've been in this industry for quite some time.
Hmm.
We've seen a lot of changes and developments over that time. I'm based in our Sydney office, and Paola is in our South African office. So the sun hasn't come up here yet, but we wanted to make it at a reasonable time for everyone to attend. So we're going to be running through some of the more common visa types and applications tonight or this morning, and we will be discussing them, discussing any potential changes that have been mooted, explaining how they work. If people do have any questions as we're going through the process, then please just put it into the chat. And Paul is going to be going through those and asking relevant ones. We won't, unfortunately, today have time to go into very specific questions you might have about your situation. But following this webinar, we're going to be looking to arrange consultations with people, and that will be a space where you'd be able to ask your specific questions. Also, having said that, also at the end of the webinar, we have allowed some time for people to ask questions. So please do use that chat box, and we'll try and get through as many as we can within a reasonable time. But that's the format we want to use tonight. Okay, well, welcome and thank you for attending. For me, this is relevant. This is a sunrise where I was last week on holiday with my wife and kids. This is about an hour and a half to 2 hours north of Sydney, and we had a very nice week up there. Same place, I think maybe I enjoyed my holiday, which is why I'm showing you these. But all of this is all very accessible from even the biggest city in Australia. Okay, as I mentioned, Four Corners Immigration has been around with offices in South Africa and Australia for nearly 30 years, in fact. We've got a lot of experience with dealing with the department and the law, and we've seen a lot of changes, and I think that's probably one of the one constants in immigration law is change, and that's why I think it's important that once you've made up your mind to consider something like this, that the sooner you act upon it, the better, because things can change and it can become more difficult for you. Having said that, I don't think this is a decision that you can really rush. It's probably one of the biggest things that you and your family would do in your life is to move countries and start a new life. So it's important that I think that you gather all of the right information to allow you to make a proper decision, and then decide the timing on when you want to act upon that. But one thing I think I would say is once you've made that decision, the sooner you act upon it, the better, so that the things don't change and opportunities don't slip away for you. Just as a little bit of background as well, Australia has always been a country of migrants, and our immigration program is important, and it delivers real economic benefits to Australia, as well as much needed skilled workers. Tonight, we want to give you some information about the skilled migration program. You might have heard about that. It's the points tested application, which covers visa subclasses 189, 190, and 491. We also will touch on employer-sponsored migration, and that's visa subclasses 482, 494, and the permanent residence visa class 186. That's where you have a job offer and you're sponsored by an Australian employer. We also want to address family migration, which is an important part of our business, which are partner visas and parent visas. Now, there's been a lot of change and disruption over the last few years. I guess starting with the COVID pandemic, and even after that, there's been full migration reviews, and it really is something that we have to deal with, which is that the goalposts move. So what we want to try and do today is give you an idea of what you're currently looking at and what your opportunities are. Okay, just to give you a little bit of background and some history. The business and investor visa program for Australia has closed. That was an area we did a fair bit of work with, but the government has closed that now, and those type of applicants have to look at alternatives. There's been a much tougher approach taken to student visas, particularly focusing on what they call a genuine student. And so we're seeing a higher number of student visa refusals. So that's a lot stricter in terms of how you have to apply. Another point which is frustrating for many of our clients is we're seeing partner and parent visa processing times extending. And let me just update you on that if that is going to be relevant for you. I did just have the up-to-date information. If you're looking at partner visas at the moment, 50% of applications have been processed in 8 months and 90% in 17 months. So you can see it's not an overnight process, and particularly if partners are wanting to be together, it's important to plan where are you going to be lodging your partner visa application. Is it offshore or is it in Australia? If you're looking at parent visas, that can be anywhere from 12 years to even up over 30 years. So that's a real issue with parent visas, and something that if you're considering that for yourself or for your parents, careful planning is required on how you're going to manage those processing times. Skilled migration, the points tested application, it's still very, very competitive, and currently there's a real focus on health and education occupations. So for other occupations, it is more competitive in terms of receiving an invitation to apply for the visa. Having said all of that, though, because skilled migration is becoming more competitive, employer-sponsored visas are playing an even more important role in filling skills shortages in Australia. So the Sydney office where I am, we do a lot of employer-sponsored visas for both temporary residents and permanent residents, and it certainly shows that there still are skill shortages in Australia, so that when employers can't fill positions locally, they are looking offshore to get the best skills for their role. Okay, so some recent changes as well. There used to be a visa called the Global Talent Visa. That's now been renamed and considerably changed, in fact, to the National Innovation Visa. It's not exactly the same, but that visa is really targeting the sort of world-renowned people in certain fields. So it's got limited scope, but it is something that we within this office we do manage a number of those applications. So we wanted to make you aware of that. In terms of skills in demand, that was the old 482 visa. There've been some changes there, but the main one was they've changed the name from temporary skill shortage to skills in demand, but the subclass is the same at the 482 visa. And there's also, we haven't seen it happen yet, but there's also some potential changes that have been mooted to the points test. But what I did want to do at this stage as well is for people that aren't that familiar with the points test, which is a very common type of application for people outside of Australia. It's they look at various factors such as your age, your qualifications, your English language ability, your work experience, um, whether or not you're single. There can be points available there. If you have a partner, there are potential points for their background as well. And the minimum required points is 65 points. But at the moment, because of the competition and the large number of people applying, you really are needing to see, for example, a lot of IT occupations are needing 100 points to receive an invitation, and accountants can be 95, and a lot of occupations you're really looking at needing 85 points or more to receive an invitation. And what I mean by that as well, again, for people who aren't familiar with skilled migration, your first step is to submit what they call an expression of interest, or an EOI. You might have heard of that. Now, that is not a visa application. The Department of Home Affairs does not charge an application fee for that. You are literally saying, I'm interested, here are my details. Now, then you can sit in that EOI pool for up to 2 years, and you have to wait to be invited to apply for a subclass 189 or 190 or 491 visa before you actually get to the visa stage. And at the moment, there can be some uncertainty about how long you will be sitting in the EOI queue. And the reason for that is the Australian government, the Department of Home Affairs, they choose the best applicants with the highest score. So you are not always, you're not able to see what everyone else has got in terms of points. So that's where there is uncertainty, where some people could receive an invitation very quickly from an EOI, where other people could wait there for some time. And I did want to give you just the latest information as well about invitation rounds, just as some examples of what sort of points were required by people. So we've got an air conditioning and mechanical services tradesperson. They were at 65 points. An architect was 85 points. An automotive electrician was 85 points. A bricklayer was at 65. A carpenter was at 65. And I think what that really shows is what we've been seeing recently is, in addition to health and education occupations, we're starting to see a demand, or an increased demand, for construction professionals and construction trades. So that's a positive change that we're seeing, and that's shown by the points that received an invitation are lower for the occupations that they're focusing on. So let me keep going just to give everyone a bit of an idea. Even a child care centre manager was 75 points. An early childhood teacher was 85 points. An economist was 85. A general electrician was 65. A fitter general was 85 points. A A GP, you're looking at 75. Let me go through and see if I can find some other ones that will be of interest to people. Metal fabricators at 85, a midwife at 75, an orthopedic surgeon at 85, a painter at 70, a plumber at 65, a vet at 85. So you can really see that it all comes down to, sorry, I've pushed that by accident. It really comes down to what Australia is looking for and where the demand is, rather than, you could see there were trades occupations with lower scores than doctors. So Australia is trying to get more specific about attracting the skills that they currently need. That can also change. So it's really important that you keep up to date on the invitation rounds, the points that were required, and also something I think that is really important is to look at maximizing the points that you can claim, because you always want to claim the most because they're picking the people with the highest scores. And one good example of that is that if you have a UK passport, for example, or an Irish passport, you don't technically have to sit an English language exam, but you score 0 points. So if you sit the test, you can score 10 or 20 points. So there are ways you really need to consider not just doing the minimum, but doing the maximum you can to try and put yourself into the best possible position when you're looking at the skilled migration and the points test. Okay. Now, having said all that, and hopefully not making it sound too hard, what are the steps that you can take to make a move to Australia? As for overseas people, skilled migration is the main one they focus on. Now, this is another photo. I must admit that a client of mine who in his spare time flies a helicopter in Sydney and took me up one Saturday. So that was a real treat for me to fly up to Palm Beach and back in the helicopter. He was a South African client, but it gives you a good look at the Sydney Bridge and Harbour there as well. You can see I've already gone ahead and discussed a number of those points there on the screen. What you've got, something that has changed recently is there are certain visas, the 190 and the 491 visa, are state nominated, and that means there's an extra step in the EOI process where you actually apply for and register for being sponsored or nominated by a state government in Australia. So what that means is Queensland or New South Wales or Victoria or Western Australia. And state nomination can be another way that you can improve your chances of receiving a visa. But in the recent years, the department has really reduced the number of places or the quota available to the states. So there's less there than there used to be, but it's still something very much worth considering and something that we would want to discuss with you if you're eligible, because it can be a way to receive an invitation from your EOI sooner. So it's definitely worth considering. What it does mean, though, is if you are state nominated, rather than you can move anywhere in Australia, you are expected to live and work in the state that nominated you for at least 2 years when you first arrive in Australia. But as I said, things are picking up and more occupations are being invited, and we're seeing construction as a particular and trades as an area that is growing. Still, health and education is positive for those people. But I think the key thing is that this skilled migration program has always been very important to Australia's economic growth and to filling skill shortages, and I think it will be for a long time still, and certainly is something that for the last 29 to 30 years we've helped tens of thousands of people and families move to Australia under those visa classes. Okay, now let's have a little bit of a chat about temporary residence and permanent residence. Temporary residence is, as you say, it will have an end date, as it sounds, sorry, and not always is there a pathway to permanent residence from a temporary residence visa. For example, if you came on a student visa, that doesn't guarantee you permanent residence. There are ways that you could create a pathway, but it's not a guarantee. So I always feel, or what I like to do with our clients is obviously set things out very clearly for them, manage your expectations so that you know what you're doing before you start this process. What is becoming more popular with Australian employers and with overseas applicants now, though, are employer-sponsored visas as skilled migrations become more competitive. And essentially what a temporary residence employer-sponsored visa is a work permit. It's subclass 482 and it is valid for up to 4 years. Now there is a pathway to permanent residence from that visa, and that is once you've worked in Australia for 2 years on a 482 visa, you are then eligible to be sponsored by your employer for permanent residence through visa subclass 186. So unlike skilled migration, where you submit the EOI and you wait, and it can depend on other people's situation and not just yours as well, with employer sponsored, there's more certainty about the process. It still takes time to get the visa, but you know it is going to happen. So the biggest aspect of employer sponsored, and particularly if you are overseas, is securing a job offer, because that has to happen first. Once that has happened, it's then a three-step process for you really to obtain a 482 visa and then ultimately PR. With the 482 visa, the first step is actually for the employer to apply to become a standard business sponsor, and that is then a status that is valid for 5 years and allows them to sponsor people. And then for each person they're looking to sponsor, they need to nominate you for a specific occupation. Now that occupation needs to be on the skilled occupations list in Australia. So that's also something that needs to be confirmed, is if your occupation is not on the list, you cannot be sponsored. There are also minimum salary requirements and qualification and work experience requirements that would need to be assessed, but that's something we could get into with each person individually, but you do need to look at those occupation lists very, very carefully. There are other ways that employers can sponsor through designated area migration agreements and through labour agreements. They're less common than the standard business sponsor, but the benefits of those DAMAs and the labour agreements are that a bigger range of occupations can be included on them, and also lower skill level occupations can be included on them. So that's also something that is worth considering. And if you are looking at this, or you have even got a job offer, is what status has the employer got? Are they a standard business sponsor? Have they got access to a DAMA? Have they got access to a labor agreement, and how is that all going to work? So there's those first two steps in the process, which are actually more about the employer than you. And then, so you've got the sponsorship status, the nomination, and then there's the actual 482 visa application process, which is more about you in terms of what are your qualifications, your work experience. You do need at least 12 months work experience. What's your English language ability? Will it just be you, or will family be going with you as well? So that's but as I said, there's a lot of work that has to be done. There's labor market testing where the employer has to show they couldn't find someone locally, but actually identifying an employer and securing the job offer is really the key part of that process, and then we can step in and make that visa happen for you. And then, as I said, once you're in Australia and working, and after 2 years, you then are in a position for your employer to sponsor you for permanent residence. Another option for people is partner visas. If you are married to or in a relationship with an Australian, there's clear pathways for that, for you to come to Australia and and live and work. And it's an important part. Family reunion is an important part of the Australian program as well. Parent visas, again, family reunions are very important. A lot of clients that I dealt with, let's say 25 or more years ago, who are permanent residents or citizens of Australia, then look to sponsor their parents to come over. So it's certainly possible. That the issue with parent visas is very much the length of time the processing is taking, and that is because they've capped the parent visa numbers that they will release each year, and so that queue just keeps getting longer and longer, unfortunately. We've already, I think, discussed skilled migration. Is a very common way for a lot of our clients from South Africa, the UK, Ireland to come to Australia as permanent residents. You don't have to have a job offer for skilled migration, but it is competitive. And as I said, there's the National Innovation Visa, but that's going to only apply to a more limited number of people. Okay, so I suppose this is relevant in terms of employer-sponsored visas that we were discussing a little bit earlier. Australia's unemployment rate is just over 4% at the moment, and that means that skill shortages are a reality here. A lot of our clients find that the only thing that is holding back their business is finding the right people. So as a result, our Sydney office, we process 482 work permits all day, every day. And it is a common practice here. But again, once you've secured that job offer. And having said that, that's why it's important, as I said earlier, to identify which employers would you like to work for, approach those employers, and also try building your network in Australia. Have you got any friends here? Do you have any family here? Who do they know? Start speaking to recruiters. Start identifying company contacts that you could approach. It is more of an effort for Australian employers to recruit from overseas, but they are doing it. So it does mean that you've got to sell yourself a little harder in that process. There are certain things you can do to make it easier for the employer and for yourself. And really, that's be job ready. And what we mean by that is some occupations have to get skills assessments to get a 482 visa. And get those done first. So the employer is in a position to look and say, okay, this person has the equivalent skills of an Australian in the same role. It makes it easier for them. Sit your English language test so you can show that to an employer and have good employment references available. And again, the idea is make this easier for the employer to have the discussion with you and to consider sponsorship. So there are steps you can be taking even prior to securing a job offer to make yourself more attractive to employers in Australia. Okay. Now, I've touched on a number of points here today, um, and we're very happy, as I said, to take questions later. Um, I think it is important to get really good advice and know where you stand before you make these decisions. Certainly, we can give you your options. We can advise on timeframes, costs, and making sure we get the application right. This avoids delays and any mistakes. We can also keep you updated on any changes that will happen that could potentially impact your application. And we really view it as a partnership with our clients to help them achieve what they're looking for in what is a very big move to another country. Okay, so I think I'll just stop sharing this now so we can come back and see if we have any questions. Paola, is there anything there that you wanted to discuss? I think you're on mute, Paola.
Silly me. Okay, here we go. Okay, there was one or two questions that I could answer quickly on the chat. For example, Jabu was asking if there are any age restrictions for skilled visas, and I said that the skilled migration has an age cutoff of 45. So that's
Mm-hmm.
another reason why, Matthew, we encourage people to act soon, because you blink and then you're over 40. People change. That can affect people quite drastically. There was another question here. Let me just scroll up. Here we go. Sandiso has asked, is it possible to get work rights in Australia even before you get a visa, just to increase your chances of getting employment? So this is a good question.
Well, look, yes, yes, technically, it just
Mm-hmm.
depends on how you're going to do it. If you apply for one of the skilled migration visas, so subclass 189, 190, or 491, you are granted permanent residence. So when you arrive in Australia, you have work rights. You have the same rights as Australians to be employed, and that certainly makes it easier with employers. It's a good point to raise because they don't have to sponsor you then. You can just start work. So that's more attractive to an employer. And the reason being is that sponsorship takes time. It can take 6 months to get a 482 visa in certain cases, and it costs money. So if you can walk in and say, I have work rights, the employer, if they're happy with you, can offer you a job straight away without doing anything more. So that that's actually the best way to make yourself more attractive to an employer is to obtain permanent residence through the skilled migration program, because then you can start work straight away. So I think it is a really good point there that I probably should have raised, is that's one of the real benefits of getting skilled
Mm.
migration, of permanent residence, is that you're able to start work. You kids are going to school. It's easier to even obtain leases on houses or purchasing property. There are a lot of benefits in getting permanent residence before you arrive in Australia.
Very true. I always say to people, it's like you're investing in yourself and being able to get work rights for you and your family. It's a big one. Let's have a quick look. There was another. Matthew Lalit is asking if we can help with complex health waivers. So that's quite a complex question. What would you say about that?
Look, yes, I would be happy to speak to you. It is I think complex is the right word to use with health waivers, and it really will depend on the circumstances of your situation. There are also, it's important to remember that only certain types of visas allow you to apply for a health waiver. Not every visa will give you a health waiver. So it's first of all determining which type of visa are you looking or have you applied for? Is a health waiver available? And then it depends on with medical situations, the Australian government looks at it on two levels. One is, could you be a threat to Australia? And by that, I mean, do you have tuberculosis? So you could infect people in Australia. And the second one is, could you become a financial burden on Australia's Medicare system? And then they have medical panel doctors, and those people do assessments, and they look at sort of the average or person in a sense and say, with this condition, we think it's going to cost this much. And if it's a permanent residence visa you're applying for, they look at that cost over 10 years. If it's temporary residence, they look at it for the length of the temporary residence visa. And then there are certain thresholds of let's say just over 50,000, and then there's another threshold at 500,000 Australian dollars, and depending on what their assessment is, you then decide how you're going to respond to that. And you can argue with that assessment too. If they come back and say, we think it's going to cost X, and we can provide evidence that it's going to cost Y and it's less, certainly you can argue with them on that. But health waivers really do depend on the circumstances of each case, and it's important to prepare those very carefully, get support from doctors and specialists, and also I guess to manage expectations, because right now, without knowing anything else about it, it's hard to say whether or not we would be able to be successful. But certainly we've worked on a number of health waivers over the years and been successful. But you can't guarantee that. You've just got to put together the best submission that you can.
Great, Matthew. Mike has asked, he's been waiting for his EOI since 2023, and his VET-assess has expired last November and got it renewed again. How can we assist him?
Okay. Well, I would imagine your EOI is also expired because they're only valid for 2 years. You'd also probably need to check your English language results, because to see if they're still valid as well. But yeah, I would, if you were chatting to Paula, I think we'd be looking at submitting new EOIs. Are we doing one? Are we doing multiple ones? Have we got the valid skills assessment? Have we got English language? Where's your age? Are we reaching any thresholds where you might lose points? And probably we would do a fresh assessment and just see where you stand.
I have put the link to our assessment form in the chat. I'll do that again as well.
Right.
Anyone wants to fill that in, that would be good.
Great. Now I can. Thanks for that, Paula. That's good news about the English language. Just going back, looking at Strada. Yes, with your skills assessment there. Yes, because what happens is, why it's important is, let's say your skills assessment expires, and then you receive an invitation to apply for a visa. From that invitation, you have 60 days to apply for the visa. If you cannot get your new skills assessment in 60 days, you're going to miss your opportunity. So it's always important to ensure that your English and your skills assessment are current and valid. So yes, the answer to that is absolutely. And it's even worth looking at that, not as it expires, but a few months before it expires, so that you've always got a valid. You can always update your skills, your EOI, sorry, with the new details. But that's really important, because I think it would be heartbreaking if you actually got an invitation and then you couldn't take advantage of it. So certainly, yes, I'd encourage everyone, make sure your English and your skills assessments are up to date. We're always setting alarms and chasing our clients to make sure that happens, because we don't want anyone to miss an opportunity.
Yep. Sure. The questions are pouring in. That's good. Jay has asked, is the fire protection industry in the shortage category?
It really depends on which role within that industry. We do work with a company that is sponsoring some people from the UK in that industry at the moment, but it really depends on, within that company. Just as an example, there are people who are involved in sales. There are people who are more technical. So it would really depend on specifically what your qualifications and work experience was. So that might be worth filling in that assessment form and having a chat with Paola or myself to determine more. We'd have to drill into that a bit deeper to answer your question, but it's not out of the shortage category. It just depends on your occupation.
That's right. And on a similar vein, Jabu has also asked about the banking industry, and the same applies, Jabu. It's not about the industry itself. Is it a yes or it's a no? It's your actual occupation, and is your occupation on one of the skills lists? So I think let's do an eligibility assessment. I'm happy to do all of those tomorrow. Matthew, there's a question from Sonia about student visas. She said, can you please elaborate on student visas, especially when there is a requirement of permanent residency to apply?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not a requirement for student visas. That must be something else, Sonia, that you're thinking about. A student visa is a temporary residence visa for the length of time that you're going to be studying. I'm not sure whether what it could be, Sonia, is to be eligible for a student visa, a course and an institution have to have what they call CRICOS registration, which is what that means. Without going into too much detail, that allows you to then take on foreign students and they can then apply for student visas. Yeah, okay, so it's the ADF. Yeah, that would be it, because the ADF is limited to citizens and permanent residents. But if you were looking just at universities and colleges, that wouldn't be a requirement. So that's specific to the Defence Force. I did see up here a question from Denise.
Oh, there, Denise, about getting married.
Yeah,
okay.
The skills assessment and EOI. Yes, it's a really good question. The way it works with a family, Denise, is we choose one person to be what we call the main or principal applicant. And this is what happens in the assessment process you'd go through with Paola, is working out with a couple who's the best applicant. And it doesn't matter who it is, it's just let's pick the best one to make it easier for you. And then you're the principal applicant, and your partner and any children are secondary applicants, but they are included in your EOI and any further visa applications, and they receive exactly the same visa as you will receive. So your husband would have full work rights if you receive permanent residence. You know, kids can go to school. All of you will have access to Medicare. So yes, so it's just that process of choosing who will be the principal applicant, is just who's got the strongest number of points, really, and then everyone else is still included in that.
Great.
Uh,
Matthew, did you see the question from Alonso? He's a professional bricklayer.
yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now Four Corners is not a recruitment company, but a lot of our clients, as we've been working with them for so many years, they do contact us when they have shortages, and we do look to match people in our database with Australian employers, and we're very happy to do that. It's a good result every time you get that, and you get happy employers and happy employees. So again, Alonso, I think get in touch with Paola. She would need to look at, your employment references, your qualifications, etc. Another thing to think about, and this would apply to everyone here today, is Australia's a big country. Where in Australia do you want to be? Some people might say, I don't care, anywhere. Other people might say, I want to go to Brisbane. My brother or sister is there. So that's something else to sort of think about for everyone is have you considered where you want to live, or would you, for example, let a job offer decide that for you? But I think what's really important for everyone, looking at skilled migration, looking at employer-sponsored visas, or even partner and parent visas, is get an eligibility assessment done, because you don't want to waste your time sitting English language tests or getting skills assessments or applying for police clearances if in fact you don't qualify. So it's really important, that first step of, okay, I'm interested. Can I do this? Yes, no, and then you make decisions from that point. It's also relevant at that assessment stage. It's completely confidential, obviously, with us, but we will be asking you questions about whether or not you have any medical or health issues, because as we were chatting about earlier, you will do a medical as part of a visa application, and you can, in certain instances, fail that medical, and then you will not be granted the visa. So it's important to let us know about any potential issues as early as possible so we can work through them with you. The same with character issues or criminal records. Not everything means you fail what they call the character test here in Australia, but some things will. So again, I know that most people feel very uncomfortable about talking about those sorts of things, but we need to get it out and in the open as early as possible to advise you properly, so that you're not going down this path and then a medical issue or a character issue means the application is refused. Let's rather talk about it at the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's all questions. I think, Matthew, we should remind people that our assessment is free. Our initial eligibility assessment is free. And if people want to continue to have a personal one-on-one consultation, then we do charge a fee.
Yes. But I would really encourage you to complete the assessment form. I would also encourage you to book appointments with Paola. As you can tell, there's a lot of different aspects to the Australian immigration system. We need to find a solution that's tailored to your situation. And that's where we can really get into specifics. It also will allow you to ask the questions that you want to ask about your situation and for your family. So yeah, I do think that eligibility consultation is a really critical first step in this process. Okay. And also, I think an advantage, something you can take advantage of to ask more questions, because tonight was a general, or this morning was a general introduction of potential options for you, and now we really need to drill down and find what specific solution is going to be the best for you. Okay, well, that's our hour nearly up.
Yeah.
I wanted to say thank you everyone for attending. I would encourage you to fill in the assessment form and speak to Paola. You're very welcome to contact her or I with any questions. And we would be very happy to assist you and your family if we can. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I'll end the event now. Thank you, Paola. And we look forward to hearing from everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you, Matthew. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you.